Ms. Kathy Kiernan.
You're the best. Thank you. I'd like you to think for a moment about an important person in your life that you may be avoiding having a difficult conversation with. It may be your spouse, or your mother, or your son, or maybe even your boss. And the longer you wait to have that conversation, the harder it gets. About 2 years ago, I started down the journey of exploring the difficult conversation. When I was working with my friend and colleague, Mike Nally. Mike runs Lead Your Way Solutions, and he says the conversations we should be having are the important ones, the difficult conversations, because those are the conversations that are game changers in our lives. Those are the conversations that will make our relationships better and will make us happier. But we avoid them at all costs. I have a good friend of mine who is a successful businesswoman. She runs a business, she's well educated, she's well traveled. In all of our eyes, we would look at her as being very successful. But to her father, she thinks that she's not enough. And for her entire life, she has carried this with her. She's unable to have the difficult conversation with him. And it keeps her from being truly fulfilled in her relationship with him. And we talk about having that difficult conversation before he is gone. So why is it that we avoid these difficult conversations? It's because we're afraid. I don't know about you, but every time I think about engaging with someone and giving them feedback, I get fearful. I get a little knot in my stomach, even if it's a casual, constructive feedback conversation. We're afraid that we might make the situation worse. We're afraid that they may finally leave us. We're afraid that we might get fired. Marianne Williamson, an author, public speaker, teacher of the Course in Miracles, says that there's really only two emotions, love and fear. And if we're coming from a place of love and generosity and giving and receiving, all is right with the world. But if we're coming from a place of fear, we're going to make bad decisions. We're going to say the wrong thing. We're going to do things that we regret. The other reason that we avoid the difficult conversations are because we were never taught how to have them. Maybe you were like me, you grew up in a family, your parents were working hard, lots of kids, everyone trying to do the right thing, live their life, raise a family, be a good community steward. But we didn't sit around the dinner table talking about our emotions. We didn't sit in the living room and talk about how we could make our relationships better. Perhaps you are an exception to that rule, and you grew up having someone in your life, a parent or an uncle or a sports coach, who taught you. But most of us have never been taught how to do that. And that takes practice, having difficult conversations, just like anything else that we do in our lives. So I posit to you that you can learn how to have the difficult conversations, but it's going to take practice, and it's going to take working on it, just like anything else. And I also posit to you that you are ready to start learning how to do that, because you're here today. You're looking to stretch and to grow and to be bigger and better. So here are a couple of steps you need to take. First of all, you need to acknowledge where you are. You need to become aware of the difficult conversations that you're not having. You need to think about when you're in a situation that you should say something and you don't. The late, great Stephen Covey says that if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting what we're getting. And the way that we begin to change and get something different is by increasing our awareness. So we start there. And then, for me, it was about beginning to educate myself. The book, Difficult Conversations, by Douglas Stone and his colleagues, is a great place to start. It will give you fodder for beginning your journey. But you could download podcasts and webcasts. You could go to seminars. You could start journaling. You could start praying and meditating. And you could start practicing. And you could find other people that you know that want to learn how to have difficult conversations as well. And I believe if you start practicing, you'll know how to do that. One of the things that I have done with respect to learning is by beginning to have the difficult conversations. So I have read books, I have started to engage, and I'm starting to practice. And another thing that I'm doing is beginning to take responsibilities for my actions or my lack of actions. Taking responsibilities means that sometimes we need to acknowledge the difficult conversation that we're not having. We need to tell people what we're thinking. We need to tell them how we're feeling, because until we do that, they won't change. We do performance reviews every year in our company with the entire organization. They're some of the best conversations that we have. We talk about the year in review, how we've done, what we could do better, and where we're going moving forward. And this past year, one of my team members gave me some constructive feedback about how she felt every time we dealt with a particular work issue. And I had no idea. And it wasn't until she gave me that feedback that I realized that I could do something about it and I could change it. And I realized that she was being amazingly courageous and that she was taking responsibility for her part of the difficult conversation. My husband has a great saying about when we get into an argumentative mood or a place in our conversations where things get escalated. And he will say, "You're right, I'm wrong, I'm sorry." He's here today. You can get a chance to meet him. And here's what I love about this, is it adds lightness to the conversation, just like it did here with us today, right? But it also acknowledges his part in the escalation of the conversation that we had. And for that, I truly respect him, because that is a game changer in the difficult conversation. Taking responsibility, making the apology, and moving forward. Every month, I have breakfast with a colleague of mine, and it's a time for us to get together before work to talk about work and also talk about our personal lives. And our December breakfast was coming up, and the day before, I was having a bad day. It was a challenging month for me. I knew that I was going to miss some key goals last year, and I was really disappointed in my work performance. So the day before we were supposed to have breakfast, I had a little bit of a meltdown. And he bore the brunt of that. It was the end of the day, and I was rude, and I acted inappropriately to him. And I stormed out of the office. And I drove home. And I knew that there was a difficult conversation that needed to happen the next morning at breakfast. And I didn't know what I was going to do about it. And I asked for guidance. And I had a challenging night of restless sleep. I got to the restaurant in the morning. He was already there. And it was clear that he had had a restless sleep as well. So I gave him the opportunity to give it to me. And he laid me out on the carpet. And he told me how he felt and how I had done him wrong, and it wasn't his fault. And I knew at that moment that my only response was, "You're right. I'm wrong. I'm sorry." Thank you.